I remember the snow that evening as if it were a living thing, whispering secrets I wasn't ready to hear. New York in December is a cruel illusion, a city draped in lights that promise warmth but deliver only a biting chill, the kind that seeps into your bones and stays there, reminding you of all the things you've lost. The streets below our Upper East Side apartment were alive with holiday frenzy. Fifth Avenue's windows glowing with mechanical cheer, carolers bundled against the wind, the distant hum of ice skaters at Rockefeller Center. But up here, in our glass-walled penthouse, the world felt distant, muffled, like a dream I was about to wake from. It was the ornament that did it, a delicate glass bauble, cobalt blue with silver flecks, hanging innocently on our tree. Marcus had insisted on decorating early this year. For the kids, he said, his voice warm and fatherly, as he lifted Lily onto his shoulders to place the star. Theo clapped his little hands, his 5-year-old joy infectious. I smiled through it all, stringing lights that flickered like false hope, pretending this Christmas would be different, whole, unfractured. But that night, after the children were asleep, I noticed the smudge, a faint red streak on the ornament's curve, like a lipstick kiss left in haste. I reached out, my fingers trembling as if they knew before my mind did. The color came off on my skin, scarlet, bold, not mine. I wear nude shades. They're safe, elegant, invisible. This was the mark of someone who wanted to be seen. I turned the ornament over and there it was, a tiny engraving I hadn't noticed before. To my love forever in blue. The date etched below, our anniversary, but not from me. My breath caught, sharp as the winter air outside. I sat on the floor amid the discarded wrapping paper, the trees' lights casting fractured rainbows on my skin, and felt the world tilt. Marcus was in the study, working late as he so often did. I could hear his low laugh through the door, the kind he reserved for private calls. I pressed my ear against the wood, shame burning in my cheeks. The words were muffled, but one phrase cut through the glass. The acquisition closes right after the gala. The hotel will be perfect for Christmas Eve. Hotel, Christmas Eve, gala cover. The pieces slammed together like ice cracking underfoot. I backed away, my hands clutching the ornament so tightly I feared it would shatter. But it didn't. It just hung there in my palm, cracked only in my imagination, a symbol of everything I thought was unbreakable. I didn't cry then, not yet. Instead, I slipped the ornament back on the tree, high enough that the children wouldn't notice the smudge. I straightened my sweater, smoothed my hair, and walked into the kitchen to pour a glass of wine. The city lights twinkled outside the window, mocking me. Betrayal wrapped in holiday ribbon. That night, as Marcus slept beside me, his arm thrown casually over my waist, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. The snow had picked up, blanketing the city in white numbness. I felt it in my chest, a cold so deep it burned. He had a mistress, Sophia probably, his assistant who always lingered too long. I whispered into the dark, I will not break. But even as I said it, I felt the first fissure form. The next morning, the apartment smelled of cinnamon from the advent calendar treats I'd baked. Another act of normalcy, another mask. Lily bounded in at dawn, her 8-year-old energy pulling me from bed. Marcus kissed my cheek as he grabbed his coffee, his touch casual, unburdened. Big day at the office, holiday deals closing. He ruffled Theo's hair and was gone, the door clicking shut like a period at the end of our life. I nodded through it all, my smile a fragile thing. But inside, the storm raged. As the children ate their breakfast, I slipped into the study and opened his laptop. Password unchanged, his arrogance my ally. Emails from Sophia. Can't wait for our meeting at the plaza. Wear the tie I got you. Attachments, photos of them in a hotel bed, her red lipstick smeared on his collar. The devastation hit like a blizzard wind. I clutched the desk, my vision blurring with tears I refused to let fall. 10 years of marriage, 2 beautiful children, a home filled with laughter and light. And for what? A younger woman who saw him as a conquest? I closed the laptop, wiped my eyes, and returned to the kitchen. Yes, darlings, let's go see the tree. We bundled up and stepped into the cold. At Rockefeller Center, the massive fir towered above us, lights twinkling like stars fallen to earth. Lily squealed with delight, but I felt nothing but the numbness of snow settling over my heart. That afternoon, while the children napped, I allowed myself to unravel. In the bathroom mirror, I stared at my reflection. 36, still beautiful, but lines of fatigue etching my face. I cried then, silent sobs that shook my body. The humiliation burned. Christmas carols drifted from the radio in the living room, silent night, ironic and cruel. But even in the depths, a spark ignited. I would not become the scorned woman screaming accusations. No, I would be smarter, colder. Like the winter outside, I would freeze the pain and use it to sharpen my resolve. I will not become small, I whispered to my reflection. I will rise from this.
I began my strategic work the next morning while Marcus was at golf. I hired a private investigator discreetly, a woman named Clara, with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. Infidelity cases are my specialty, she said over coffee at a quiet cafe near Bryant Park, where the winter village market bustled. The smell of cinnamon twisted my stomach, a reminder of holidays now tainted. Clara's reports came swiftly. Hotel receipts from the plaza, text messages intercepted, photos of them at a Christmas market in Central Park, her head on his shoulder. Each one was a shard of glass in my heart, but I collected them like weapons. At home, I pretended normalcy. I baked cookies with the children, their flour-dusted faces lighting up as we shaped reindeer. Lily asked, "Why are you sad, Mommy?" I hugged her tight. "Just tired, sweetheart. Christmas magic will fix it." But inside, the plan formed. I researched divorce laws. New York's no-fault system meant I didn't need to prove adultery for the split, but evidence would strengthen my case for assets and custody. Marcus's wealth was ours, built on my support. I wouldn't let him walk away with it all. I also began the quiet psychological groundwork. I moved the first $50,000 into a new account opened under my maiden name. It felt like cutting away dead wood. I started small transformations, a gym membership at a sleek studio in Soho where I pounded the treadmill to the rhythm of carols remixed into beats. My body, softened by motherhood, began to firm. I felt the strength returning, not just physical, but something deeper, a resolve forged in the cold fire of betrayal. I needed to see her with my own eyes, the way you need to touch a burn to believe the pain is real. This encounter would be my confirmation, the final emotional lock clicking into place before the strategy became absolute. It was the 19th of December, a Thursday. Marcus left wearing the charcoal Tom Ford suit I bought him last Christmas, telling me he had a client dinner that would run late. I waited 20 minutes, then bundled Lily and Theo off to their piano lesson with the nanny. I wore black, cashmere turtleneck, tailored coat, boots with a heel sharp enough to leave marks. No jewelry except my wedding ring, which suddenly felt like a shackle. The plaza at 6:30 is a cathedral of excess. Garlands thick as pythons coil up the marble columns, a 40-foot tree drips Swarovski crystals, and the scent of fur and money is overpowering. I took a seat at the champagne bar where I could see the entrance to the palm court without being seen. They walked in at 7:03. Marcus first, hand at the small of her back the way he used to guide me through crowds. Sophia wore red, blood red, the color of warning flags, and lipstick on a glass ornament. She laughed at something he whispered, and the sound floated across the lobby like shards of crystal. I felt my stomach fold in on itself. They checked in at the concierge, Marcus using the alias M. Winters. The concierge handed over a key folder, embossed with a tiny gold wreath. Sophia's fingers brushed Marcus's as she took it. That small touch, familiar, possessive, hurt worse than any photograph. I followed them to the elevators, staying half a lobby behind, hidden by a forest of poinsettias. Just before the doors closed, Sophia turned, pressed Marcus against the wall, and kissed him with the kind of hunger that leaves bruises. The doors shut on them like a curtain falling on the final act of my marriage. The snow finally began to fall then, fat, silent flakes that melted the instant they touched the warm marble floor. I walked out into it, letting the cold slap me awake. Central Park was across the street, the carriages lined up like black beetles under fairy lights. I paid a driver triple to take me once around the loop. Somewhere in the darkness, a brass band played "Oh Holy Night," and the irony was so sharp I laughed out loud, a cracked sound that startled the driver. When I got home, I poured myself Marcus's Glenlivet and stood in front of our Christmas tree. The lights were on a slow fade, like a heart that couldn't decide whether to keep beating. I found the cobalt ornament again. I held it up to the light and studied the fracture I now knew ran straight through its center. Emotional darkness had replaced pain. I texted Clara, "Need everything you can get on Sophia Langford, family, debts, socials, exes, parking tickets, everything." I hung the ornament back on the tree, higher this time. Let it hang there, I thought. Let it watch what happens next.
Motherhood is the only love that can survive betrayal without diminishing. Every morning, Lily and Theo woke me with the same ritual. They were my proof that something in my life had been real, untainted. "Mommy, why are you sad?" Lily asked one morning, her serious gray eyes, Marcus's eyes, searching mine. "I'm not sad, darling. I'm thinking very hard about Christmas." I began writing them letters, sealed envelopes tucked into a box at the back of my closet. One day, when they were old enough to understand, I would give them my truth. "Lily, your father once carried you on his shoulders through the Christmas market in Prague and bought you a marionette that looked like a princess. People change, darling, but that love was real once. Hold on to it, the way you hold on to favorite ornaments long after they've chipped." Theo, you were born during a blizzard. The city shut down, but your father drove through whiteout conditions to be there when you took your first breath. That man existed. I need you to know he existed, even if he got lost somewhere along the way. I wrote until my hand cramped. Then I sealed the envelopes with deep crimson wax and hid them behind winter coats. Hate is a heavy ornament. Children shouldn't have to carry it. But I was carrying enough for all of us. The mirror and I declared war, and the first shot was fired in December. The external changes became fully visible in January after the separation was filed, but the strategic internal transformation began immediately. I started with the smallest rebellions. I threw out every nude lipstick shade. I replaced them with reds, Russian red, ruby woo, lady danger, colors that announced rather than apologized. I cut my hair, blunt and sharp at the jaw. I watched 15 inches of honey blonde fall to the floor and felt lighter than I had in years. The gym became church. I deadlifted the weight of my anger. I boxed the silhouette of Sophia's smug smile. Muscle became armor. I learned the language of money. Nights after the children slept, I sat with spreadsheets in Investopedia learning about marital assets and forensic accounting. Every new term felt like a key turning in a lock. I bought clothes that fit the woman I was becoming. Tailored blazers the color of midnight, silk blouses, boots that clicked with authority. I walked into rooms and felt heads turn, not because I was Marcus Winter's wife, but because I was Elena Volkov again, the name I was born with. One afternoon, I stood in a dressing room in a black cashmere dress. The mirror showed eyes that no longer flinched. I looked like a woman who could ruin a man without raising her voice. I bought the dress.
Then I bought the matching coat. When I walked out onto Fifth Avenue, the city was finally, truly snowing. Big, slow flakes that melted like absolution. I was ready. Clara's final dossier arrived on the 21st of December. I locked the children's playroom door and opened the envelope with the reverence of a priest opening scripture. Page after page after page. Hotel receipts time-stamped during Lily's ballet recitals. A joint checking account opened in Sophia's name. My money, our money, funneled into a future that did not include me. And the emails. God, the emails. Marcus to Sophia, March 14th. 10 more years and the kids will be old enough. Then we start over. Clean slate. Just us. Sophia to Marcus, April 2nd. Tell him you're staying late at the office again. I booked the penthouse at the Edition. Bring the ring this time. My engagement ring has a sister now, apparently. I read until the words blurred. I expected screaming, the full operatic collapse. Instead, I felt still. Still the way deep water is still right before it swallows everything. I closed the folder and pressed it to my chest like a hymnal. I whispered into the carpet. They think they are writing the ending. They have no idea I am holding the pen now. That night, Marcus came home smelling of her. I let him talk. I even laughed at the right moments. My voice sounded calm and untouched. I smiled and passed the roasted potatoes. I smiled and tucked the children into bed. And in the dark, with steam curling like ghosts around me, I made my second vow. I will not become the woman who burns the house down with herself inside it. I will be the one who walks out carrying the children and the insurance policy, and I will watch it burn from a safe distance.
Christmas Eve arrived wearing white. Marcus left at 6:30 for his client dinner. He wore the cufflinks Sophia had given him, heavy onyx, cold as her ambition. He kissed me goodbye with the same mouth that would be on her within the hour. "Merry Christmas, darling," he said. I smiled the smile I had been practicing for weeks. "Merry Christmas, Marcus." When the elevator doors closed on the nanny and the children sent to Aunt Mira's for a sleepover surprise, I exhaled a breath I felt I had been holding for years. I went to the safe. I took passports, birth certificates, and the deed to the house. At 8:30, I poured myself the 1996 Krug he had been saving for a special occasion. I carried it to the living room, sat on the floor in front of the tree, and waited. At 10 o'clock, I opened my laptop and emailed Miss Hargrove, my attorney, the final, devastating batch of evidence with the subject line, "File first thing in the morning. No extensions, no mercy." I began to write the statement I would release when the time was right. Not hysterical, not bitter, elegant, surgical. By midnight, the apartment was silent except for the soft tick of the grandfather clock. I stood, walked to the tree, and removed the cobalt ornament. I held it up to the light one last time. Inside its fractured heart, I saw my own reflection, distorted, multiplied, but unbroken. I wrapped it carefully in tissue paper and placed it inside a small black box. Evidence, a relic, a promise. I sat in the dark and watched the snow cover the city until it looked clean again. December 26th dawned white and merciless. Marcus came home at 3:17 a.m. smelling of hotel soap and regret. He slid into bed carefully. I let him believe I was asleep. At 9 a.m., the process server arrived. Marcus signed for the envelope without looking up. He opened the divorce papers in the kitchen. I watched from the doorway, arms crossed, barefoot in silk pajamas the color of fresh bruises. The moment comprehension hit his face was the most honest expression I had ever seen on him. Elena, don't," I said softly. "Don't waste the air." He ran the usual script. "Mistake, midlife crisis, still loves me. We can fix this." I let him talk until he ran out of words. Then I laid the black box on the counter between us, the one containing the cobalt ornament. He stared at it like it might explode. "That," I said, "is what's left of us.
Cracked, stained, and completely worthless. But I'm keeping it. A souvenir. I turned to leave the kitchen. Behind me, his voice cracked. The children will be with me, I finished. Primary custody. You'll get generous visitation when you've proven you can be sober, faithful, and present. Until then, you'll see them supervised. My lawyer will explain the details. I walked away without looking back. In the hallway, I paused, pressed my palm to the wall, and felt the tremor start in my knees and travel upward. Not fear. Not anymore. Power. The legal confrontation happened weeks later, in Miss Hargrove's office, a preliminary hearing that served as the final psychological strike. I wore black again, severe, tailored, funeral. My wedding ring was conspicuously absent. Miss Hargrove slid the settlement agreement across the table. Marcus arrived with his own attorney, a shark who smelled of panic. The lawyer began the typical negotiation. 50-50 split, joint custody. I waited until he paused for breath. Then I opened the projector. The first slide, the Plaza Hotel bill for Christmas Eve, charged to the joint Amex. Second slide, the email chain where Marcus promised Sophia my life. Third slide, a detailed forensic accounting ledger of Ascension LLC, the shell company he used to funnel discretionary bonuses. A clear ethical violation. I watched the blood drain from his face. Adultery alone won't sway a New York judge, but the misuse of funds, a gross ethical violation, will certainly persuade the firm's board to terminate you before the Q1 acquisition closes. And the documentation of emotional neglect of the children is enough to guarantee my custody demands. I clicked to the final slide, a single clean spreadsheet detailing the proposed settlement. I leaned forward. Here's what happens next. You sign what's in front of you. Primary custody, the apartment sold, all affair expenses deducted from your share, and a morality clause that triggers full custody transfer if you violate terms. Or I release everything to your firm's compliance committee, the journal, and page 6. Your choice. Marcus looked at me like he was seeing a stranger, the woman he had created through his own dismissal. He signed. When the last signature was notarized, I stood. Merry Christmas, Marcus. I walked out without looking back, heels clicking like the ticking of a bomb that had finally gone off. The war was not over. It had simply moved to a colder front. January thawed into February, and the city shed its holiday skin. The tree came down, the lights went dark. Marcus tried every trick. Sudden devotion, tearful visits, whispered promises. I never wavered. In court, the judge, a woman with steel gray hair and zero tolerance for theatrics, listened. Marcus painted himself the victim. I let the evidence speak. When Sophia took the stand, subpoenaed, furious, mascara already smudged, she admitted the affair began before Theo was born. The judge's gavel fell like ice cracking. Primary physical custody, Elena Volkov. Proceeds split after $187,000 in affair-related expenditures deducted from his share. Outside the courthouse, the snow had turned to sleet, stinging and sharp. I paused on the steps, coat open to the cold, and spoke directly into the cameras for the first and last time. My children will grow up knowing that love is not a transaction, and that when someone tries to break you, you do not have to stay broken. Then I walked away. Behind me, I heard Marcus calling my name, his voice cracking like thin ice under too much weight. I did not turn around. The sleet felt like baptism. Ruin, when it is done properly, is almost silent. The story had metastasized by the first week of February. People simply started connecting dots that had been glowing in the dark for years. The first domino was Sophia's Instagram. She posted a tear-streaked selfie, caption, "Sometimes love isn't enough." The replies turned feral. Someone recognized the onyx cufflinks. Within minutes, the thread was stitched together like a crime scene quilt. Her agency dropped her. Marcus lasted longer. His firm's holiday party photos resurfaced, him with his hand on her lower back while I stood 3 feet away.
Clients began canceling meetings. One of the founding partners requested a quiet word about reputational risk. I watched it all from the brownstone I had quietly purchased in Cobble Hill. Red brick, original moldings, a garden big enough for snowmen. I watched on the iPad while drinking coffee from a mug Lily painted. I did not smile. I simply observed, the way you observe a building you once lived in finally being demolished. Inside my head, the monologue ran on a constant, elegant loop. You thought I would scream. You thought I would beg. Instead, I walked away carrying the matches and let the wind do the rest. I never wished them pain. I simply stopped protecting them from the consequences of their own choices. And that, I discovered, is the cruelest thing you can do to someone who once believed they were untouchable. Spring tried to arrive in March. I moved into the brownstone on a day so cold the mover's breath hung in the air. I hung exactly 3 things the first week: a photo of the children, their handprint ornaments, and a single empty hook on the wall where a new Christmas tree would one day stand. I needed blank walls the way recovering alcoholics want empty cabinets. I started my business in the garden-level office, small, curated holiday experiences for people who had outgrown the old stories. I called it Lumina, because light is what remains when everything else burns away. The first client was a woman whose husband left her on December 23rd. I designed a Christmas for her and her daughters built entirely around new traditions. I handed her a box of matches and said, "Burn whatever no longer serves you." By April, I had a waiting list. Money began to arrive in steady, quiet increments. Some nights I sat at the kitchen island with spreadsheets glowing on the screen and felt something I had not felt in years. Safety that did not depend on another person's mood. Inside my head, the monologue had changed tenor entirely. I am not the woman he left. I am the woman who left the leaving to him and used the exit door to build an entirely new house. Children are snow-made flesh. They absorb everything, and when the sun comes, they melt and reform into something entirely new. Lily stopped asking when Daddy was moving back in. Theo stopped looking for him at the bedroom door. We built traditions the way Masons build walls. Every new moon, we wrote letters to the people we used to be and burned them in the fireplace while eating s'mores. One April afternoon, Lily found the black box in my closet. "Mommy, why do you keep the broken one?" I sat on the floor with her and took the ornament out. "Because sometimes," I said, turning it so the crack caught the light, "the most important stories are the ones about what happens after something breaks. We became something else, something stronger in the broken places." She studied it, kissed the crack, and put it back in the box. "I think we should keep it, in case we ever forget how brave we are." That night, I moved the black box to the top shelf of the library. Some ghosts are better left free to wander. They remind you that you survived them. I stopped recognizing myself in photographs sometime around the divorce signing. That woman is dead now. The new woman arrived slowly, the way dawn arrives in winter. I see her clearest in the hallway mirror of the brownstone. She appears when I am not looking for her. She takes up space now. Her shoulders are back, her eyes do not apologize. I stand here and think, this body carried betrayal for years without collapsing. This body grew 2 humans who laugh like sunlight. This body walked out of a burning house carrying everything that mattered. I trace the scar from my C-section and speak aloud to the reflection. You are not decoration, you are architecture. You held up a whole world while it tried to tear you down. That makes you sacred. The woman in the mirror smiles, not the polite wife's smile, but something slower, deeper, almost dangerous. I have learned that desire does not die just because one man was too small to hold it. I watch the shadows move across my skin and think, I am no longer the woman he left.
I am the woman who left the leaving to him and used the door he opened to walk into a life wide enough for every part of me he tried to shrink. I am magnificent, and I am only just beginning. December returned like an old adversary who had learned manners. I'd spent 11 months turning every trigger into a trophy. We bought the tree on the first Saturday in December, Lily, Theo, and I, tramping through a Christmas tree farm in Connecticut. The air smelled of pine and cold earth and wood smell. We found the perfect 8-foot Fraser fir that smelled like forgiveness. We made new ornaments. Salt dough stars painted gold, paper snowflakes photographs laminated and strung with red ribbon. We played only music released after the divorce. Halfway through, Lily came back carrying the black box. We hung the cobalt ornament front and center at child height. You thought you were the end of me. You were only the pressure that turned coal into diamond. I hung one final ornament that year. Crystal, perfectly clear, no cracks. Inside it floated a single white feather. I engraved the base myself with a Dremel tool. Reborn, December 2025. When the tree lights caught it, the feather spun slowly, endlessly, like a promise that keeps turning into truth. Christmas Eve, 1 year after the night everything ended. The brownstones smelled of orange peel and cloves, of pine and cinnamon and the warmth that only comes when children believe the world is fundamentally good. We had new rituals. We walked to the Brooklyn Promenade. The Manhattan skyline glittered across the water like a city we once lived in. We stood at the railing and watched the lights come on until the whole island looked like a jewel box someone had finally opened the right way. When the house was quiet, I did something I had never done before. I opened the front door and stepped outside in bare feet and silk pajamas. The snow was falling in slow, deliberate flakes. The street was empty. I stood in the middle of the sidewalk and tilted my face to the sky. Snowflakes melted on my eyelashes, my lips, the hollow of my throat. I spoke aloud to the night, to the woman I used to be. I was never the ornament. I was the tree. Roots deep enough to survive winter, branches strong enough to carry new weight, lights bright enough to guide my own way home. I opened my arms and let the snow cover me. Inside my head, the final monologue of the old year rose like a carol. Let them have their borrowed hotel rooms and borrowed futures. I have built a life wide enough for every piece of me they said was too much. I stayed until I was covered, until I looked like a statue someone had sculpted out of winter and triumph. Then I walked back inside, closed the door on the old year, and left the cold where it belonged. Tomorrow would be Christmas morning, and I intended to meet it barefoot, unbroken, and entirely gloriously my own.